But then they might hear on one camp, oh my goodness, you can never have carbs because that's going to spike your blood sugar. And on the other camp, well, don't have too much fat because that's bad for your LDL. And then on the other camp, well, don't have too much protein because that's bad for your kidneys. And so they're just caught. I mean, we've got to eat something. They don't know what to eat. So oftentimes they raise their hands up in the air and say, nothing's healthy. Well, forget this. I'm not even going to try.
Mm.
Or potentially even worse, they're stuck judging and second guessing every single thing they eat.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Shafer, your host of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about storytelling as a tool to help you create your most beautiful future and reclaim your story. Thank you so much for being here today. We have an amazing show. We have the wonderful Megan Lyons. She is a functional nutritionist. She's the creator of the Lyons Share Wellness, and she has her own amazing podcast, Wellness Your Way, that she hosts. So please give a warm welcome to Megan. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. I am really excited about today's conversation.
Oh, me too. We started off the show behind the curtain, just discussing about all of the amazing things that we can share with listeners, because this is such an important topic, our nutrition. And we discussed how, we all have these early life ideas and relationships to food that then as we get older and as we face life's challenges and as we're dealing with, things like our goal weight, our goal nutrition, our goal exercise, and it's interacting with our relationship with food, sometimes we have shame around that. We have blame towards ourselves around that. And how can we shift the conversation to a bit more of a scientific one and learn how to disengage from those limiting beliefs and those habits so that we can form the habits that really serve us and our goals?
Yes, that is such a true statement. And I think everyone in some way relates to that deep rooted story of whether it is shame, blame, guilt, fear, you name it, of food. There's something down there deep inside of all of us.
Yes, exactly. So tell us, to start, the story of how you came to this, because you have a very interesting story and it didn't start with nutrition. So how did you get to this place in your life?
Well, the story starts with me just popping out of the womb as a high achiever. That's always
Mm,
been me. And there are some amazing aspects of that and some challenging aspects of that, especially as it relates to health. But
mm,
growing up, I didn't honestly really think about nutrition. I didn't think about exercise per se. I was a dancer and really enjoyed that. And I ate the standard American diet. My parents just didn't know. They were doing their best to, my mom especially, put food on the table and did great with the knowledge that they have. But I just didn't really think about it until I got to college. And on move-in day, I met this really cute guy who was on the track and cross country team. And I thought, maybe if I want to get his attention, I should start to run. And I had never run before in my life. So I started to run. I ran a quarter of a mile. And I remember feeling like on top of the world when I ran that quarter mile without stopping. And then I just kept growing it. I started dating that guy. We're now married 21 years later.
mm,
So it turned out to be a good story. But in the middle there, because I've been that high achiever, I just take everything to extremes, if
mm.
not conscious of it. So running a quarter mile made me feel great. But then running more and more and more, because I started realizing, oh, wow, this does help me alleviate my stress. This is changing my body in a positive way at the beginning, until it didn't. I
Mm.
did not complement that running with appropriate nutrition back in the day, before Instagram, before podcasts, before even widespread use of the internet. Certainly, I didn't know how to access PubMed or anything like that.
Mm.
I just learned nutrition from magazines. And what did the magazines tell me then? Eat half a protein bar for breakfast, limit those calories, like the less you can eat, the better, all of this. And taking that to the extreme as a high achiever, I did it. So I ended up And fast forward 5 years, I guess, of under fueling, over exercising, over stressing, not taking my body care very seriously. I ended up in the doctor's office at the age of 23. And looking back, thank goodness this amazing doctor ran hormone levels on me, because honestly, I think that was quite progressive at the time. However, she came back and I will never forget the look on her face. And she said to me, "Oh, your hormone levels are lower than the postmenopausal women that I work with.
Mm,
It must just be something genetic. You must just have to take hormones for the rest of your life." And I didn't know right then what was behind that, what was causing that. But I just knew that the answer at 23 for me was not to take hormones for the rest of my life.
mm,
And I'm very much not against medication and hormones when they're needed. But at
mhm,
23, that wasn't the answer for me. So that really got me into learning more about what I call real nutrition, like actually
mm,
looking into the science. And once I started that for myself and was able to, I say heal myself, although let's be honest, we're always on a continuous journey. It's not like I reached some plateau and then I checked that box and I never have to worry about my health again. That's not the case. But I did heal the issues I was having. It's just too hard not to share that with other people. So I continued my job in consulting and went down the business path. But ultimately in 2014, I left that and started the Lion's Share, and here we are.
that is such an amazing story, and I jokingly call myself at times the queen of pivot, and I find that the people who tend to gravitate towards, being on a show like mine and sharing these stories are also fellow kings and queens of pivot, right?
Yes.
Because that's how you just if life has lemons and you squeeze it and you make lemonade, I mean, you've gotta follow the course of that. You've gotta take the gifts you're given and be
Yeah.
willing to lean into what your true calling is, regardless of what you've done in the past, because you can't necessarily stay rooted there. And I love how you transformed your life to help not only yourself, but others.
Thank you. I mean, to be honest, I was happy in my old career. Management consult. I studied economics in college at Harvard and I loved it. It was fantastic. That's great. Management consulting was good, but it wasn't my calling. And so,
Mm.
like you said, to squeeze those lemons for everything they're worth, this just feels like me doing what I was meant to do and what lights me up every day. And I'm really grateful to be here.
I love it. I am so grateful that you're sharing your story with the audience. So now you have the Lion's Share Wellness, you're coaching people. What are really the fundamental things that you work with people when they first come to you for coaching? They're frustrated. They may have tried a million, it feels, different approaches to their wellness, health, and their diet, and it's just not getting them where they want to be with regards to their goals. Or maybe they don't even know their goals, right? Maybe they don't have an actionable, achievable goal. What do you do from the start to help them meet those desires and expectations?
Yeah, you hit a couple of things in there that are directly in our process. So I love that. The first is clarifying their goals, because so many of us are caught on this hamster wheel of health where not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. I don't look like that person on Instagram, so I'm not good enough yet. And we don't even really know what we want. Do we want an improved A1C, or do we want to fit into these jeans? That's great too. I'm not against it. Or do we want to actually wake up feeling healthy and vibrant and knowing that we're taking care of our longevity? It's different for every person, but knowing what we're going after is important. And then, second step would be, which continues the whole process, really unraveling some of that diet dogma. Because, like you
Mm,
said, the people who come to me, it's not their first rodeo. They've tried a lot of different things and they've picked up a lot of different things, and some of them might be helpful. Like they might find an ingredient on the label that they learned was not great for our bodies and they're latching onto that. Okay, amazing. But then they might hear on one camp, "Oh my goodness, you can never have carbs because that's going to spike your blood sugar." And on the other camp, "Well, don't have too much fat because that's bad for your LDL." And then on the other camp, "Well, don't have too much protein because that's bad for your kidneys." And so they're just caught I mean, we've got to eat something. They don't know what to eat. So oftentimes they raise their hands up in the air and say, nothing's healthy. Well, forget this. I'm not even going to try.
Mm.
Or potentially even worse, they're stuck judging and second guessing every single thing they eat. So, unraveling some of that diet dogma and really teaching them the foundational nutrition concepts, which are not sexy. People want to come and have, like, the grapefruit diet. My dad did that when I was a kid, where he ordered cases of grapefruit juice and he just thought that was going to be the answer to everything. There's nothing like that. I hate to be the
Mm.
the spoiler, but there's no magic thing out there. So really just getting people back to the foundations, and most of my clients have some work to do with their gut, some work to do with their blood sugar stability, some work to do. Oftentimes they do have body composition goals, so that's in it. Very often we have low energy, whether
Mm.
that's because they're not sleeping well or because something's off with their metabolic processes. But these are some of the common things we work with.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned sleep because sleep is a very actionable goal.
Yes.
To regulate your sleep is something you can do. It may not
Yeah.
be easy. You know, we have stages of our life where maybe we have really young ones or
Yes.
we're in medical residency or what
Yes.
have you, right? Where it feels impossible or we're traveling. There will be disruptions, but we also have choice. We have power over our sleep to a degree. And it can really affect how we eat, the choices we make,
Yes.
and how our body interacts with what we eat. Tell us a little bit more about that and what people can do to try to optimize their sleep for their nutritional benefit.
Yes, absolutely. Agree to what you said, that it has far reaching impacts. It is absolutely true that someone can survive one night without optimal sleep. Like, of course, we've all been there, and that's okay. However, even in one night, I see crazy differences when I'm experimenting and wearing a continuous glucose monitor. I see very erratic glucose patterns for the whole
Mm.
next day after that. I feel many more sugar cravings. I'm someone who, if given the choice and they were equally healthy, I can pass up the chips and the savory stuff all day. You give me the chocolate and the sweets, I'm happy. And those sweet cravings are normally kept under or kept at bay. But when I haven't had a good night of sleep, those
Mm.
sugar cravings really come back. My brain fog can be a little elevated. My mood, I'm just a little snippier with people. So everyone can relate to some of that stuff. Even if we look at something like our gut microbiome, the composition of our bacteria in our gut, as much as one night of poor quality sleep has detrimental impacts on our gut microbiome. So this stuff is really far reaching. And I don't say that to, again, shame anyone or say that every night has to be perfect. It
Mm.
doesn't. But if we can measure those changes in one night, and then we extrapolate, oh, well, I've been doing this for 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade. We
Mm.
know our health underneath is suffering from that, and we can always reverse it. So that leads into the second part, which is, what do we do? First, I think about environment. Cool, dark, quiet environment. Cool. I hate to say that my husband wins on this one, because he used to always say cooler is better. And I was like, no, no, no. But it's true. 60 to 68 degrees is the optimal sleep temperature, which is quite cool. Dark, if you have city lights streaming into your bedroom or electronics on all the time, something like that, that is inhibiting your quality of sleep. There's a now well known study where they put a teeny little light under people's kneecap as they were monitoring their sleep. So they couldn't even visually see it. But just that amount of light actually impacted, scientifically significantly impacted their quality of sleep. So again, don't have to be perfect, but if you know there's light streaming in or you do fall asleep with the TV on, it's a really great opportunity to shift that. And then quiet as possible, white noise or pink noise. If you do live in a city environment, that can be helpful, but we just want to set our body up so it can relax. And then after environment, the next thing I would go to is what you're doing right before bed. I really miss those days when I was in college and I could just work, 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 sleep. And all of a sudden I had great quality sleep and I didn't unwind and it was amazing. And my body is not 18 anymore, sadly. And it doesn't do that. We as adults, we do need to wind down. If we're
Mhm.
measuring actual hormone levels, our cortisol is coming down, easing us into quality of sleep. Our melatonin is rising all throughout the late afternoon, evening. And we can facilitate that by having a wind down routine. So it doesn't have to be fancy. For me, it's as simple as take my dogs out one last time. I do like 5 minutes of foam rolling. I drink some magnesium, brush my teeth, wash my face, and then I just read a novel. I'm big into like reading educational stuff. I love that. But I, at night, need to read a novel, like a beach read, nothing educational. I'm just turning my brain off, and an actual book, not a digital book, not on my phone,
Mm.
anything like that, as I'm falling asleep. And then very last thing, I realize I'm talking a lot. Last thing
No, I
is what
love
we're
it.
eating. Okay, amazing. What we're eating before bed. So people now are hearing these days wait 2 to 3 hours before bed, which is optimal. And again, we don't need to be dogmatic. If your
Mm.
work schedule doesn't permit that, okay, just do what you can. But most of us are used to munching, 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 munching until we literally hit the pillow. And that doesn't facilitate optimal digestive rest and optimal sleep quality. So, if you can give yourself a little window before bed, and ideally not have too much sugar in the late evening, not even have really high fat meals, which do take longer to digest. So if you have to eat dinner 1 hour before bed, maybe this is where you choose a little lighter on the fat, and something more easy to digest. So those are overarching tips for sleep.
Oh, I love that. And they're so actionable. And I think a really helpful part is yes, there are don'ts on these lists, right? We have some clear don'ts or try not tos, but we also have just as many or more of things. Hey, these are tricks and tools we can use, which
Yes.
is for us as people more digestible, right?
Yes.
To use a term
Yeah.
that goes along with nutrition. It is easier for us to digest things that we can do.
Yes.
It's harder to necessarily stop habits.
Yes.
So, starting with the things that you can do, like I can put blackout curtains on my
Yes.
windows, right? I I can commit to putting my phone in a different room.
Yes.
That's different than I will not look at my phone after 9.
Yes.
That hits you differently from a
Yes.
psychological standpoint than I can put my phone in a different room at night.
It's
Right? It's
such a
different.
good point and a great way to phrase that. And on that specific note, one of the best things I've ever done for myself, as dramatic as that sounds, is sleep with my phone in a different room and
Mm,
not touch it very first thing in the morning or right before bed. Because again, I'm that hard charging person. If given the opportunity to work, I
mm,
will work. But if
yeah,
not given the opportunity, it's all going to be fine.
yeah,
And so if I just have that out of sight, out of mind, and I'm reading my novel or I'm waking up and doing my morning routine and the phone isn't right there tempting me, it
mm.
just facilitates so much mental ease and mental happiness, where having that phone right on me, right in my hand, makes even the pleasurable moments like reading a novel or doing my morning routine makes that less appealing.
Oh, that's excellent insights and advice for people. And to get back to, the nutritional aspect of it, if we are stressed all the time, if we're looking at the news first thing, or we're
Yes.
feeling the pull of work through our
Yes.
phone, that's going to increase our stress hormones. How is that going to affect us, even if we're doing our best and we're making mostly good choices? None of us make all good choices, but we're
Right.
making mostly good nutritional and exercise choices and how
Yeah.
much we're drinking water and things like that. How is that stress if we're not really making those changes in our life? How is that going to affect our nutritional status?
It affects it really tremendously through two primary mechanisms. The first is the impact of cortisol, which cortisol is having its heyday right now. And you can't really believe everything you see on social media. But in part, the dialogue that's coming out right now is true, at least in part. So, what happens when I have stress, if a lion just plowed through my office door or something like that, I would have a secretion of both adrenaline and cortisol. And adrenaline, we think of it as really much better at regulating ourselves, going up and down. It's more acute stressors. Cortisol, though, if we have chronic stress, not just a lion running in one time, but every single minute I feel like that lion is running in my office, then my cortisol is going to be chronically elevated, at least for the first period of time. We might move
Mm.
into a stage of adrenal dysfunction or resistance, but at least at the beginning, my cortisol might be chronically elevated. Now, cortisol is a hormone, and all hormones work together as a symphony. So if cortisol is off, I think of that like a violinist in an orchestra. Let's say the violinist all of a sudden starts playing his or her violin extremely fast. Well, what do
Mm.
the other members of the orchestra do? They're trying to put on a show. So maybe they're going to play louder, their own instruments louder to cover that up. Or maybe they'll try to speed up to match the violinist. Or maybe they'll just take a little break and try to give the violinist a solo. But either way, they are self regulating in a way to try to make up for the violinist who's gone rogue. And in our body, cortisol, when it, quote, goes rogue, it's not really fighting against us. I like to think of our body as always working towards us and working with us. But if cortisol is chronically elevated, those other hormones will self adjust. So, what that means is maybe we start having thyroid dysfunction. Definitely, we start having insulin dysfunction, and the direct correlation between insulin or between cortisol dysregulation and insulin dysregulation is very strong. Insulin is the hormone that helps us regulate our blood sugar. So the very first time I put on a continuous glucose monitor, I thought, oh, I eat great. Like you said, not perfect, certainly, but I eat well overall. My continuous glucose monitor is going to show me great data. And in large part, it did, but it was not great. And those not great moments were almost always stress. The
Mm.
impact of stress on my blood sugar was so much more dramatic than the impact of almost any food that I had. And so I say this story to re illustrate that connection between cortisol and insulin. When our cortisol is chronically elevated, our insulin is dysregulated. That leads to blood sugar swings and slumps, which leads to cravings, which leads to excess adiposity or body fat storage. It kind of messes up everything in terms of our metabolism. So again, this is not just one stressful day. That's okay. But it's that chronically stressed person that could use some more rebalancing. Definitely like me before, I've been there and still manage my stress to this day. That absolutely messes with our food. So that was one. Two is going to be much quicker, which is the impact of our gut. When we are under stress, there's a physical connection, the vagus nerve between our gut and our brain, the largest cranial nerve in our body. And when our brain is under a lot of stress, it's sending messages down to the gut like, alert, 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 we've got problems in here. Now is not the time to really focus on absorbing those nutrients and properly digesting. We've got to divert resources elsewhere. So now, even someone who's eating healthy food, they might not be absorbing and getting the benefits of it. They
Mm.
might still have cravings. They might not be protecting against long term chronic conditions. They might have excess inflammation. They might have all this kind of stuff going on because their brain's telling their gut, we don't have enough resources to adequately digest.
Yeah. That's so helpful on a scientific level. I want to bring it, it's a topic actually I brought up with you before the show, and I want to share it with listeners because I think it's one, a cultural phenomenon right now. But two, I think it really helps bring home so that people understand the importance of cravings, how deeply rooted they
Yeah.
are and who we are, and
Yes.
how when we are challenged, if we haven't made habits
Hmm.
out of I eat this way. I
Yes.
make these choices for myself. If we haven't been really intentional about that, it is completely natural and easy to just fall back into where our cravings would lead us instead
Yeah.
of leaning into the, this is what I do, this
Yes.
is who I am, and helping us stay true to what we really want for ourselves. Because when we were kids, the choices that were made for us, or we made about food, those ingrained relationships with food between us and our psyche, where we are when we're in challenging moments, they are so hard to break those patterns. And
Yes.
so I wanted to bring up this song quote from Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department, her last song on her extended version of the album. It's called The Manuscript, and it describes a really, really challenging part in her life, and or the character's life, we'll say. And when things really changed, she says, she went from, I'll paraphrase, went from making coffee in a French press every day with this older man, right? She was trying to be this person and was a very young girl, to then, once that relationship was over, she could only eat kids' cereal and could only sleep when it was in her mother's bed. And I thought that was so impactful and such a generous, vulnerable moment for her as a storyteller and songwriter to gift to people to showcase that relationship with food. And I think it impacts all of us that when we are in those moments of challenge and distress, it's not unusual to default to relationships with food that we learned as children. And so, how do you, as a coach and consultant, work with people to basically give them the tools they need before the stressor happens? So, when it happens, they know how to stay on the path that serves future them and doesn't fall back into, that kind of inner child's way of coping.
Yes. A lot of people have this story. I would almost venture to guess that everyone has some kind of deep rooted food story that they're telling
Mm.
themselves. And so, in order to answer your question, I'll share one piece of my story related to food. When I was in high school and I was studying and would stay up late, maybe pull an all-nighter or something or close to it, my mom would make me this cherry dessert. That's all she called it, just cherry dessert. And literally what it is a can of cherry pie filling, and then you mix a box of vanilla cake mix with a stick of butter, and you crumble that over and you bake it. So suffice it to say, it is not the physically healthiest thing anyone has ever come up with. But my mom would make this for me. And I thought, okay, that's nice. I like this cherry dessert. Move on. I never really unpacked it until I started getting into this nutrition world. And I started noticing whenever I was working past my mental mode of what's acceptable time to work, whether that's 5 p.m. or 8 p.m. or you name it, I would have this insatiable craving for sweets and something special, whether it was cherry dessert or something else, I would have that craving. So I thought, what is it that I want right now? Is it actually
Mm.
cherry dessert? No, the physical memory of that kind of turns my stomach. Like I actually don't want to eat that physically. But what I want is that metaphorical hug from my mom.
Mm.
I want someone to say, hey, Megan, you're working really hard and you're doing great. And I believe in you and you're going to get through this. And that dessert was just the messenger. So, what can I do now to give myself that message, even if the cherry dessert is not right there? And oftentimes, just realizing that is enough for people. And then see if they can take it that next step. Maybe they do, if they're more extroverted, they need to reach out to a friend that they know will cheer them on and get them through this tough time. If they're
Mm.
more introverted, maybe they need to journal about it and just say, like, pump themselves up. I honestly do this to myself all the time. Journal and say, look, you're doing a great job. You can do this. What we need is that emotional pat on the back or that emotional hug. We don't necessarily need the food. And someone else's story will
Mm.
be totally different, but helping
Mm.
them get to the root of that story is always helpful.
Finding out the why.
Yes.
Always finding out the why. And it makes me think about other tricks, because once you know the why and getting back to the memory, do you want to eat pizza, or would smelling something that's like pizza do it? Would a little bit of tomato sauce do it?
Yes,
Because it's going to have the same smell and it's going to take you to that place in your mind, that happy memory. Can we find substitutions nutritionally
absolutely.
that will take us there emotionally? Because, we all are emotional eaters, right?
Yes,
We all have emotion tied to our eating, tied to our culture of food. Food is often love, food is connection. And we can't completely disentangle ourselves from that, but maybe we can have little actionable ways to not eat the cherry dessert because it doesn't serve us. We don't even want that. But how
right.
can we get that same feeling so we feel supported in that moment?
Absolutely. And to your point, I think it's such a gift that we can enjoy food. I'm not someone who says food is fuel no matter what, eat something that's
Mm.
disgusting to you. eh, And also not food is just pleasure, food is just joy. I
Mm.
believe there's a happy medium. So every meal that I eat, I do enjoy. Now, pure taste wise, would I maybe rather have ice cream on some given day than uh, salmon and broccoli and whatever else I'm having? Maybe, but I have become so deeply familiar with how foods make me feel that
Mm.
I genuinely want that salmon more than I want the ice cream if it's some random Tuesday. And then maybe if I'm getting ready to go to my grandfather's 100th birthday party pretty soon. And I know I'll have ice cream because that's like a family memory. And that's great. I'm not going to shame myself for 1 minute for having ice cream, but that's an occasion that's different than my daily habits, right? My daily habits, when I actually ask myself, how do you want to feel? What food will really serve you right now? And if you're craving something else emotionally, can you give yourself that emotion in a different way?
Mm.
Almost always, I'll want to make the healthier decision for myself.
I love that. And I love that, that took time. That took you creating data points and being
Yes.
introspective about your relationship to food, about what am I looking for. It's not an immediate process. It takes time. It takes coaching. It takes, the
Hmm.
kind of work that you do with people. If they can't get there on their own, don't feel hopeless or helpless. There are resources out there available to you.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. Well, I am so excited about this and all of the to dos that we've discussed. I wanted to circle back to something you said about sleep, that we were talking about the things that we can do at night.
Mhm.
And we discussed, the wind down routine, the good
Yes.
things we can do to wind down.
Yes.
There's also something that I think a lot of adults do, and they have it as a part of their wind down routine. It's become a habit,
Hmm.
that is going to not only inhibit our sleep, and we know that for a fact, but also affect our nutritional goals, and
Yes.
that's alcohol use. Can you
Yes.
talk about how that affects someone's nutrition?
Absolutely. Now, again, not being dogmatic, I think if you have a healthy relationship with alcohol and you want to have a glass of wine once a week or something like that, I'm not going to be the one to say no. But what happens is in scientific, especially in nutritional research, nutrition research is never perfect, and people tend to latch on to what they want to hear.
Mm.
So maybe the previous decade before this one, people were really into resveratrol. Oh, I've got to drink wine because resveratrol, that has great benefits for longevity, and people who drink wine live longer, and all of this stuff. And if you looked at some of the studies, they said that. But that's never the whole story, right? Are
Mhm.
the people who are drinking one glass of wine per night, are they more likely to be in community? Are they more likely to be relaxed? Are they more likely to unwind? Do they also happen to have a really clean the rest of their diet? whatever. So a lot of those studies have now been debunked. And now we're kind of shifting to, ooh, alcohol is a neurotoxin, which it is.
Mm.
Alcohol is not good for your brain. That's why your liver will put all of your other metabolism on hold to process that so that the alcohol doesn't get into your brain. And now
Mhm.
people with these devices are starting to realize, when I drink alcohol, I can't get that deep quality sleep, that a percentage of deep sleep that gives me a good score on my Aura ring or on my whatever else just doesn't happen if I have alcohol. And then they
Mhm.
start to realize, well, the next day, I just don't want to eat as healthily. And if I start drinking more and more and more, the scale is having trouble budging, or I'm doing all the right things and I just can't get the results I want. So these days, people are realizing all of the detriments of alcohol. And I do think it is tempting because it has a physiological impact. If you're stressed, which we're all stressed, we talked about that, and you can have that glass of wine and it takes you down a notch, I understand why that's tempting. And I understand why people can make it a daily habit, but it's not solving our problems. It's
Mm.
probably creating more health problems if we're doing it on a regular basis. And there, in some ways, it's in some ways a shame that we're masking what we really need, which is figuring out why we're so wound up and why we need a substance to help us unwind, and not allowing us to do the real work. So I am not here to say everyone needs to be alcohol free forever, but I am here to say, if you're drinking it habitually multiple times a week and you feel like you can't unwind without it, just consider what it's doing to your health and ask yourself if there are other ways to help you get that same feeling that you're looking for.
That's such a beautiful way to phrase it. And again, it is focused on your goals,
Yeah,
right? No one is here to shame anyone.
right.
It's just taking a step back and saying, okay, we've developed certain habits. We all develop habits. And because they're habits, we keep doing them, but they may not be serving us. They may not even be what we want to do. And
Yes.
sometimes it takes a little shakeup to take a step back and say, wait, is this serving my goals? And it takes, like you said, the journaling to figure
Yeah.
out, what are my goals?
Yes.
How do I feel when I make this choice, when I follow through on this habit?
Yes.
And in 12 months, what are the goals? So,
Hmm.
what's my goal fitness level? What's, whatever goal it is for you, it's going to be different for everyone else. My goal is that I will eat. A goal I set for myself this spring was, I want to have something fresh at every single meal.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
so for me, I'm a vegetarian. I eat a lot of, legumes,
Yes.
beans, and things like that. So sometimes when you're really, really busy, it's easy to just, I hate to say it, but just heat up a can of beans
Yeah.
and just do that. And I just found that wasn't meeting my emotional needs for
Yes.
eating. That
Yes.
just kind of felt sad.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
took me back to being that kid that would just heat up my own can of
Oh,
of Chef
yes.
Boyardee, right? And so I found that doesn't cut it for me. What's
Yeah.
something that can move me towards my goal of having a good relationship with food? When do I feel best about food? And I found that really it's when I have something fresh, when I take that
Yes.
time to chop up some herbs, maybe add a side salad on top of pretty much anything I eat with a little lemon vinaigrette. I mean, that
Mm.
just makes everything better.
Yes.
So when I set those goals for myself, if I'm going to do that and I'm going to stick with that, that really made every meal more enjoyable. And every time I did it, I was like, oh, I did it every single meal. And
Yes.
that's 2 to 3 times a day that I can say, see, I did it. I stood up for myself today. I stood by my choices. And that's really important, to set goals, because until you set goals, you're never going to get that feedback that says, okay, I did it today. I did it.
I just love it so much. And I love especially that you framed it to yourself and to us as, I felt proud of myself. I enjoyed
Mm.
the meal more. It seemed like an act of self care that you committed to yourself, to giving yourself these gifts of fresh foods throughout the day, instead of saying, ugh, I heard vegetables are good for you. I have to eat a vegetable. Well, that's what it's like, punishment. Our parents,
Mm,
probably well-meaning, said, "Got to eat your vegetables before you get your dessert."
mm,
We never want to frame that as punishment to ourselves. Instead, what a gift that you can take the
mm.
time to chop up some fresh things and really enjoy that. It sounded very delicious as you were speaking.
Well, thank you. And it truly is. And I highly recommend that vinaigrette salad. I'm not a
Mm,
nutritionist, but putting that on everything, it always makes me happier. I'm always glad that I did it. And I want to focus on what you said about, the get to. I
yeah,
get to do this. This is a privilege
yeah,
because we know so many people live in food deserts
yes,
or live in poverty. They don't have access to fresh food. And
yes,
it is such a devastating thing for me when my children will have a food drive at school,
mm,
and you have to give
yeah,
prepackaged meals. You have to
yeah,
give often things that you're thinking, is this the healthiest thing that's being requested? But we know it has a long shelf life and we know
mhm,
that the food bank will be able to use it. And I mean, it is a get to. I
yeah,
get to make this choice, and I'm so grateful for that. And I get to choose myself every day. And not only do I want to do that for myself, but I want to encourage other people to make those choices. I want to, encourage a long term goal of mine is to work with the school systems to help with nutrition because I'm a firm believer that
mm,
better nutrition for younger people is so key for their neurological and psychological health, right? This is a
yes,
big a social equality
it is.
issue
Yes.
to have access to proper nutrition, and we need to do something about it because this can't just be a conversation for people that are lucky enough to have the resources, the time to achieve these goals and to prioritize ourselves. We really need to make this a human rights issue that people do have access to good, healthy food, nutrition, and to an understanding about food.
You are, I mean, it's probably not close enough to see my physical goosebumps, but you are hitting a nerve for me. And it's
Mm,
bringing me back to this conversation that I had. I was volunteering at a food bank, and my job was to help customers go through this pantry and choose according to what they got based on their status, choose their groceries for the week. And I got
mm,
so excited. And I went up to the director and I said, I would love to do a series of free talks for your community on basic nutrition. And I really think I can shine. I really think I can help out. And she looked at me and she was like, "You don't get it. They
mm,
don't have time to come to a talk. They don't have interest in coming to a talk. If all they're caring about is getting food on the table, you're not welcome here, basically." And it broke my heart. It truly
mm,
broke my heart. And since then we've tried several different things and we're still looking for what's going to work best, but I am determined to make some dent in what is a hugely not equitable system and not equitable situation, and
mm,
realizing that it is such a gift to know, to even think about what I'm putting on my plate and how it's impacting my body. It's something that I do not take for granted, that I appreciate every single day. And I encourage people listening to do it as well.
mm. Thank you. And please, if there are any resources that we can share, I'd love to share any resources you have because
Sure.
this is your passion with nutrition. I'd love to put anything in the show notes so that
Yes.
people can, find out how they can support these goals to make good nutrition a part of everyone's life as we move
Yes.
forward. It's not something we're going to achieve tomorrow, but
Right.
even just discussing it and contemplating on it and making choices and maybe thinking about where can I volunteer? Where can I
Yes.
speak? What can I do? What
Yes.
can I do that's equitable, right? And I think the school system, again, is a really great place to
It
start because
is.
that's going to capture so many people.
Yes.
They get 1, 2, sometimes even 3 meals a day at school, depending upon their
Yes.
program. We can't miss this opportunity because if we miss this opportunity for nutrition, for
Mhm.
myself as a physician and neurologist treating strokes and,
Mm.
things that are definitely prevalent in part because of our nutrition, because of
Yeah.
our stress, right? Because
Yeah.
of the things we're exposed to early in life and how that affects us growing up. We
Yes.
have so much opportunity for positive impact for people's health and their
Yeah.
nutrition, starting from the school level. So, yes, I'm just so passionate about this. And I'm so grateful that you are here today to talk about healthy nutrition, to talk about the importance of sleep and managing stress, and that you are available to people to help them through your coaching as well and through your podcast. You know, podcasting is such an equitable way to get these things out there. And I think it's such a generous thing for you to do with your time. So thank you. And please share with people how they can get a hold of you and follow your podcast to learn more about these important things with regards to nutrition and lifestyle.
Well, thank you right back. I am already a big fan of your podcast and very excited for you to continue expanding it and grateful for all the work that you're doing in the world. And the easiest way to get a hold of me is my website, thelyonsshare.org. It's Lyons share.org. It has everything, my podcast, how to work with me. I've been blogging every week since 2013, so there's a good bit of free information on there if anyone just wants to search around. And I would love to connect with anyone.
I love it. And you know, it brings me back to when you were talking about stress and you very cleverly talked about the lion coming into your office.
Yes.
I like this. I like this idea of let's reframe the lion. Let's make the lion Megan Lyon coming
Yes.
into your office and being your cheerleader for your relationship with food and not the scary lion that
That's
maybe
right.
has been there
I
before.
will not scare you away.
I love it. Well, thank you so much again for being here, Megan. I encourage everyone to check out her podcast and go to her website and read the blogs. What a wonderful way to learn more about nutrition and to receive that one-on-one coaching if that's what would benefit you. We all need help with nutrition. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you to our listeners for being here. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.